We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Daled Amud Beis Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 104b. On the previous Amud, the Brisa said there was once an incident where two people were captured and their captor was walking behind them. And the Brisa now continues. Amar le'echad mehem lechaver. One of them said to his friend, Gamol shemahaleches lefanenu. The camel that's walking in front of us, Suma biachas me'einah. It's blind in one eye. Uteuna shtei nodos, and it's loaded with two wineskins. Achas shel yayin. One is filled with wine. Viachas shel shemen, and one is filled with oil. Ushnei bnei adam hamanhigim osa, and the two people that are leading that camel, echad Yisrael v'echad Nachri. One of them is Jewish and one of them is not Jewish. Amar lehen shavoi. So the captor said to the captives, Am kshay oref, this nation that's stiff-necked, me'ayin aten yodim. Where do you know this from? How do you know that the person in front of us? How do you know all this information about them? Amru lo. So they said to him, Gomol me'asavim shelafonea mitzad sheroa ocheles mitzad she'eno roa eino ocheles. The camel, it's eating from the grass on one side, the side that it's able to see, but it's not eating from the grass on the other side. We see some of the grass is eaten and some is not. That's how we know that the camel is blind in one eye. Uteuna shtei nodos, and the camel is loaded with two wineskins. Achas shel yayin v'achas shel shemen. One has wine and one has oil. How do we know that? Because shel yayin metaftef v'shokeya, v'shel shemen metaftef itself. Because the wine, it kind of sinks into the ground, but the oil floats, so we can tell what's being carried. Ushnei bnei adam hamanhigim, and the two people that are leading it, echad Nachri v'echad Yisrael. One is not Jewish and one is Jewish. How do we know that? Because Nachri nifna lederech, because the non-Jew, when he goes to the bathroom, he does it right on the road. V'Yisrael nifna l'tzdaden, but the Jew goes off to the side. He's more modest. That's how we know one is Jewish and one is not Jewish. And the Gemara continues, the Brisa continues the story. Radaf achareim. So the captor, he chased after them to see if this was true. Umatza kedivreim. He found that everything that they said was accurate. And so he came v'neshakan al roshan, and he kissed them on their heads. V'hevion lebeison. He brought them to the house. V'yasal hen seuda gedola, and he made for them a great feast. V'hayameraked lefneim, and he was dancing in front of them. V'yamar, and he said, Baruch shebachar bizaro shel Avram. Blessed is the one who chose the seed of Avram. V'nasan lehem mechachmasu, and gave to them from his wisdom. Uv'chol makom shein holchem, and everywhere where they go, nasin sarim la'adoneim, they become officers for their masters. Upitron v'holchu levateim b'shalom. He let them go, and they went to their houses in peace. And the Gemara continues, the Pasuk in Eicha says, Bacho sivke balayla, she cries at night, and the Gemara says, Shtei bechios halalu lama. Why does it say the word cry twice over here? Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Echad al mikdash rishon, one is crying over the first Beis HaMikdash, v'echad al mikdash sheni, and the other one is crying over the second Beis HaMikdash. And balayla, it says she cries at night. Why specifically at night? And the Gemara says, al iske layla, it means with regards to what happened at night, talking about the sin of the spies. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vatisa kolo eda vayidnu eskolam vayivku ha'am balayla hahu. It says that the people cried that night. Again, this was by the Meraglim, and so that's what's referenced over here when it says Laila. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Oso halayla leil tes ba'av haya. That night was the night of Tisha B'av. Amar lehen HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Klal Yisrael, Atem b'chisam b'chia shel chinam. You're crying for nothing when it comes to hearing the report of the Meraglim. V'ani ekva lachem b'chia l'doros. I'm going to make this night a night that you're going to cry for a real reason for all generations. Davar acher, another explanation, balayla. What does it mean, balayla? Shekol habocha balayla kolo nishma, that anyone who cries at night, so it's heard more because it's quiet at night, and that's why it specifically says she cries at night. Davar acher, another explanation, balayla, why specifically at night? Shekol habocha balayla kochavim umazolos bochen imo. Anyone who cries at night, the stars and the constellations, they cry with him. Davar acher, another explanation, balayla, why specifically at night? Shekol habocha balayla, anyone who cries at night, hashomea kolo bocha kenegdo, the person who hears the other person crying, he also starts crying. And the Gemara brings an incident like this. Ma'isa b'sha'achas shechento she Rabbi Gamliel. There was an incident with a certain woman, the neighbor of Rabbi Gamliel, shemeis b'na, that her son died. V'haisa bocha olav balayla. She was crying about it at night. Shamar Rabbi Gamliel kolo v'cha kenegdo. Rabbi Gamliel heard her voice. He heard her crying, and he started crying as well. Ad shenashru riseinav, until his eyelashes fell out. L'mocher, the next day, he kiru bo talmidav, the students. His students realized what happened. V'otzio mishchunaso, so she took him out from being. They took her out rather from being his neighbor. That way she wouldn't be crying nearby, and it wouldn't cause him to cry as well. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, in Eicha v'dimasa alichya, and her tears are on her cheeks. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and again, some have the gears of Rabba, Ki isha shebocha al balan nu'ureh, it's like a wife who cries over the husband of her youth. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Eli kivusu l'chagurasak al bal nu'ureh, again, on the husband of her youth. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Hayut sareh l'rosh, those who oppress her, they are as leaders. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says, again, some have Rabba. Kol ha-meitzar li-Yisrael, anybody who oppresses Klal Yisrael, Nasa Rosh, becomes like a leader. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Ki lo muaf la'asher mutzak lo, again, those who oppress her, they don't grow weary. Ko'esa rishon, heikol arza Zavulon, at first, light against the land of Zavulon, v'arza Naphtali, in the land of Naphtali, v'achron hichbid derech hayam, ever hayarden glil hagoyim, and afterwards, a more heavy affliction by the way of the sea and the other side of the Yarden and the Galilee of the nations. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rava says, and again some have Rabba. Rabba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol ha-meitzik li-Yisrael, the pasuk means to say that anyone who oppresses Klal Yisrael, eino oyef, he's not going to grow weary. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk in Eicha says, Lo aleichem kol ovrei derech, it's nothing to you, all of those who pass by. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rava says that Rav Yochanan says, again, some have Rabba says that Rav Yochanan says, Mikan lekublona min haTorah, from here we learn kublona, the idea of complaining. We'll see Rashi in a moment from the Torah. And Rashi explains, Mikan lekuvlana min haTorah kisha'adam modiat saro la'acher. When a person tells his pain to somebody else, he complains about that pain. Tzarech sheyomar lo, he should say to him, Lo savo zos loch, this shouldn't happen to you, kamo shabo elai, the way it happened to me, ki kashu l'shmoa, because it's difficult to listen to this, shepa'amim chozeres olav, because sometimes it will return to him, v'amakbid al kach, and somebody who's strict about this, ein bo misham nichush, that wouldn't be considered sorcery, to be strict about doing that. Lishon achrin, another understanding of what it means, kublana, l'kublana kashiyesh lo tzara yodiena l'ravim, it just means when a person has something bad happening, he should tell the public, kublana tzaka, he should scream out, that's a good thing. And finally, Rashi gives a third explanation, lishon achrina neged, another explanation of kuvlana means, it means opposite or corresponding to. The mitargaminan keval, that's the targum of that word. Ka'adam shomer l'chaveiro would be like when a person says to his friend, lo kenegdecha ani omer, I'm not speaking about you. That's what the idea of kublana is, that the person says that which I'm talking about, it's not about you. And the Gemara continues, again the pasuk said, Kol ovrei derech, all who pass by. Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rav. Rav Amram says that Rav says, Asauni, they rendered me, ka ovrei al das, like those who violated the most fundamental laws, meaning Yerushalayim, those who were in Yerushalayim, they violated the greatest of Averos, the ilu b'stom, because whereas by Stom, ksiv it's written, v'Hashem himtir al Sodom, that Hashem rained down upon Sodom, v'ilu b'Yerushalayim ksiv, whereas by Yerushalayim it's written, Mimorim shalach eish b'atzmosai, from above he sent fire in my bones, v'Yerdena, and it prevails, and it's also written, Vayigdal oven ba'asami mechata Sodom, it says that the sin of my nation was greater than the sin of Sodom. And the Gemara continues and asks, V'chimaso panam yesh bedavar, but if that's the case, is there favoritism over here? If the sin of Yerushalayim was greater than that of Sodom, why wasn't Yerushalayim overturned and destroyed? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rava says that Rav Yochanan says, and some say it's again Rabba says that Rav Yochanan says, Mida Yisera Haisa b'Yerushalayim, there was an extra Mida when it came to Yerushalayim, there was something extra, Shalo Haisa b'Stom, that didn't exist by Stom. The Ilu b'Stom ksiv, because whereas by Stom it's written, Hineza haya avon Stom, achoscha gaon sivas lechem v'yadoni ve'evyon, lo hechzika, talks about by Stom, that they didn't help the poor. V'ilu b'Yerushalayim, whereas by Yerushalayim ksiv it's written, Yedei Noshim Rachmanios Bishlu Yaldeyan, it says that there were the women, they were Rachmanios, they had mercy, and so therefore with that extra zechus, that's why Yerushalayim was not overturned. And Rashi explains, V'chimaso panam yesh bedavar, is their favoritism, V'hoel v'Yisrael roim yoser misodom. If Klal Yisrael was worse than Sodom, lama lo nefchu kestom, why weren't they overturned like Sodom? Rashi gives another explanation, Lashon Acher, another explanation, V'chimaso panam yesh bedavar, Tahasam ksiv Hashem himtir hu bi'atzmo, over there it says Hashem himself gave the punishment. V'hacha ksiv shalach al yedei shliach, here it was through an agent. And the Gemara said, Mida Yisera Latova, there was a Mida Yisera in terms of good with regards to Yerushalayim. The Yerushalayim Ksiv Yedei Noshim Rachmanios Bishlu Yaldeyan, it says again, the Noshim Rachmanios, it talks about the fact that they had mercy, Alma Rachmanios, how you see that they were merciful. V'ilu B'Stom Ksiv Yadoni V'Evyon, by Stom it says, Lo Hechzika, it says they didn't help the poor. Umidazu Kapara Aleim Shalo Nefchu, and that fact, that Mida, was something that was an atonement for Yerushalayim. It wasn't overturned. Rashi gives another explanation, Lashon Acher, another explanation, Midi Yisera Puranas Gedola Haisa Yerushalayim. It means to say there was a great punishment in Yerushalayim. She'aldeim hayu ochlos zuim zu, because their children were eaten this one with this one. Techsiv hayu levaros lamo. Again, that's what it's saying in the pasuk over there, Bishlu Yaldei, and it talks about the fact that they cook their children. V'ilu b'stom ksiv gaon sivas lechem shelo tamu tamoni. By stone, it seems that they were satisfied. Sivas lechem, they weren't that poor. Halamadata gadol Puranas Yerushalayim, Puranas Dom. So you see that the punishment of Yerushalayim was greater than that of Stone. And therefore there was no favoritism over here. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Silo kol abirai Hashem bekirbi. It says Hashem spurned all of the mighty ones. Ka'adam shomer lechaveru. It's like a person who says to his friend, Nifsala matbeyazu, this coin is disqualified. So to hear all of the great people of Yerushalayim, they are discredited. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says, Patzu alayich piem. They open their mouths. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and again some have Rabba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, B'shvil ma hiktim et pei li'ayin. Why is it that the pei, again this is written in the order of the aleph beis, but here the pei is before the ayin. Why is the pei before the ayin? B'shvil meraglim sha'amru b'fiyim. It's because of the meraglim, the spies, that they said with their mouths, mashalo ro beineim. They said with their mouths that which they did not see with their eyes. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says in Tehillim, Ochle ami ochlu lechem Hashem lo karu. It says, those who eat among my nation, they eat bread, they don't call upon Hashem. Amar Rava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rava says that Rabbi Yochanan says, and again some have Rabba says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Kala ochel milachmon shal Yisrael. Anyone who eats from the bread of Yisrael, toim tam lechem. Then they taste the taste of bread. That tastes like real bread. V'she'eno ochel milachmon shal Yisrael. But one who does not eat from the bread of Klal Yisrael, eno toim tam lechem. He doesn't taste the taste of bread. And again, the pasuk said, Hashem lo karu, they don't call Hashem. Who's that referring to? Rav Amar Elu Hadayon, and Rav says that refers to the judges. They were not righteous. Ushmuel Amar Elu Melamde Tinokos, and Shmuel says it's those who teach the children. They weren't doing it for the right reasons. And the Gemara continues, Mi Mona. Now, who's the one that counts? We said again in the Mishnah, we count those kings and those ordinary people who have no chelik in Olam Haba. Who's the one that created this list? Amar Rav Ashi says, Anshe Knesset HaGedola Monam. It's the Anshe Knesset HaGedola that made this list. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Bikshu Oda Limnos Echad. They wanted to count another king. They wanted to count Shlomo HaMelech as well, who should not have a share in the world to come. However, Bod Musdiyukno Shalaviv. However, the image of his father came, David HaMelech, V'nishtacha Lefneim. He came before them, V'lo Hishgichu Aleh, and they didn't pay any attention to that when his father argued that he shouldn't be in the list. Ba'esh min Hashamayim. Then a fire came from heaven, V'licho Eish B'saf Saleim, and it scorched their benches. V'lo Hishgichu Aleh. They didn't pay attention to that either. Yatza Baskol V'yamra. Baskol came out and said, Lohem, it said to them, and this is a pasuk in Mishlei, Chazisa ish moher b'malachto lefnei malachim yisiatzav. You see a person in his work, he's good in his work, he stands before kings. Bal yisiatzev lefnei chashuchim. He doesn't stand before those who are dark, before those who are obscure. And the idea over here is, Mi shehiktim beisi lebeso, the one who built my house before his house. Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash before his own palace. V'lo and not only that, el shebeisi bana b'sheva shanim. My house, he built it in 7 years. Uveiso bana b'shlosh esrei shanim. His house, he built in 13 years. He was much quicker in building the Beis HaMikdash. So that person, lefnei melachim yisiatzev, he should stand before the kings. Bal yisiatzev lefnei chashuchim, he shouldn't stand before the chashuchim, before the obscure, but still v'lo hishkiach aleh, still they paid no attention. And so Yatza Baskol V'yamar, then the Baskol came out and said, and this is from the pasuk in Eov, Hameimcha yishalmena ki ma'asta ki atot tivchar v'lo ani. Do you think you're going to choose and not myself? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who chooses, who has Olam Haba. And the Gemara continues, Darshe Reshumos Hayuomrim, those who darshim psukim metaphorically, they say, Kulan boyin lo'olam haba. All of those in the list, eventually they also did come to Olam Haba. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Li Gilad v'li Menashe v'Ephraim, to me is Gilad and Menashe and Ephraim, Mos Roshi Yehuda mechokei Moav, Sirachzi al Edom, Ashlich Nali Olai Peleshes Hisrooi. And the idea over here is that it's to me, meaning to say we're darshaning it, that they come to me to Olam Haba, and we're going to darshan each part of the pasuk pasuk li Gilad, to me is Gilad, ze Achav. That refers to Achav, shenafal b'Ramos Gilad, that he fell in Ramos Gilad. He is to me, he eventually comes to Olam Haba. And Menashe is Kimashmo, that's referring to Menashe, the king Menashe. Ephraim Mo's Roshi ze Yeravam. Ephraim Mo's Roshi refers to Yeravam, the Ka'asi me Ephraim, he came from Ephraim. Yehuda Mechokaki, when it says Yehuda Mechokaki ze Achitofel, that refers to Achitofel. And Rashi explains, Hamei Imcha Yishalmen, is it you that pays? V'chi aleichem l'shalim tashlume onsho la'adam, are you the ones that decide who gets punishment? Shatem nimosim bo b'shlomo, you don't like Shlomo, lomar shein lo chelek lo'olam haba, that you can say that he doesn't have a portion in the world to come. Ki atot tivchar v'lo ani, do you think you choose and not me? V'chi ha'bachira b'chem talui, is it talui on you? Are you the ones choosing v'lo bi and not me? Lomar mishi yesh lo chelek u'mi ein lo chelek, can you decide who has a portion in the world to come and who doesn't? Halo bi adavar talui, of course, it's dependent upon me, it's dependent upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Darshe Rishumos, those who darsh in the Psukim, Darshe Psukim, meaning again, they darsh in the Psukim metaphorically, K'dichsiv es harashom v'chsav emes, hayuamim shalakulam, yesh lahem chelek. Those who darshan, they say that all of them have a chelek in the world to come. Afilu leMenashe, v'Yeravam u'li'achav, even Menashe, Yeravam and Achav, and that we learn from the Pasuk, li Gilad v'li Menashe, to me is Gilad, to me is Menashe, Olai lisbol avonim, I'm the one that will carry their sin, K'dei sheyihu eim zochim, so that they will merit. And Menashe Kimashmo, Menashe is what it sounds like, meaning Menashe ben Chizkiyahu, the king Menashe, the son of Chizkiyahu. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Hey Amud Aleph.